NSW
in Jamaica.
President Donald Trump's
solid waste reduction.
Marcus Safferty. Good day, I'm Shane Masters and welcome to News Rewind, Jnn's look at the top stories of the week that was. After recording no murders in 2016, Augustown has seen an upsurge in violence as rival factions trade bullets. The latest, the shooting death of a man and the injuring of two others in a gun attack Monday morning. Abigail Smythe has the details.
A police-operated drone hovers over Augustown. There's a strong police military presence on the ground. There are signs all around that this is a community gripped by fear. In the latest shooting incident, a 35-year-old correctional officer, David Stewart, said to be attached to the Tower Street Adult Correctional Facility, was shot and killed and two others shot and injured. Member of Parliament for St Andrew Easton, Favour Williams, spoke with Frontline News.
What my understanding this morning is that at about 8:30 there was a barrage of shots fired in the community from men in a car, a drive-by, but there are also men on foot that were shooting high-powered rifle guns.
Mrs. Williams condemned the attack and said Jamaica needs to act quickly to curtail crime.
But we have to get this crime issue under control here for people to feel free to walk about, conduct their business, and for economic activity to return. So Augustown, a beautiful community, has a lot of advantages, but the crime situation is just a blight on the community.
While decrying the spate of violence in the community, Mrs. Williams noted that she will be requesting of the Prime Minister that Augustown be declared a zone of special operation. Following a peaceful and murder-free 2016, there has been a recent flare-up of violence in the community. 7 persons were shot, 4 fatally last month after gunmen opened fire on patrons at a bar in the community. Earlier this month, a man was killed and other persons injured during a shooting in the vicinity of Bryce Hill in the area. And the Jamaica Urban Transit Company, JUTC, said it has temporarily suspended bus service to Augustown following the gun attack in the community. As a result of the change, the JUTC says its number 77 and 78 buses will terminate in Papine. It stated it will resume full service to Augustown once it has been advised by the police that it is safe to do so.
Meanwhile, contract killers or killers for hire are cashing in big bucks to murder people. And then there are those who take as low as $50,000 or less to murder victims. This is a report on the street, and the police are taking steps to increase the arrests of persons paying gunmen to carry out killings. Kimberly Wright has more.
Head of Homicide in the Major Investigation Division, Senior Superintendent Cleon March, says the police are ramping up all efforts to curtail the practice of contract killings. He notes that contract killings vary in prices, depending on the targets and how desperate the killers are for cash. He points out that prices vary according to the contractor's opinion of the actual shooter. Some shooters are hired because of their own financial background and will be quicker to accept a payment that could be deemed to be low by others. On the other hand, there are the professionals who hold killing as a livelihood, and so their fees are far more exorbitant. SSP March revealed that there is no set fee, but prices range from $50,000 to $1 million. In recent months, police investigators have theorized that contract killers were involved in the murder of father and son Dennis and Richard Ramdale in separate incidents in Kingston. 2 suspected hired killers have also been arrested in connection with the recent killing of 32-year-old Simone Campbell Collymore and 36-year-old taxi operator Winston Watson in St Andrew. Mrs. Collymore's husband, Omar, is accused of contracting those murders and was recently arrested and charged. Law enforcement sources claim that $500,000 was paid for the killing of Mrs. Collymore, with the taxi operator being in the wrong place at the wrong time. SSP March admits that the police sometimes face a challenge because they can't get to the actual persons who contracted the crime, even though they arrest the shooter. He points out that oftentimes the shooter and the actual client have not met, but an arrangement is made through a contact person. It was revealed by a man who claims to be among contact persons that more criminals are getting involved in contract killings because it is easier to make money this way rather than stealing items and waiting for a sale.
Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, NIA, Professor Trevor Monroe, is urging Jamaica to protect the gains made in the Corruption Perceptions Index CPI in 2017. Akoya Redamari has that story.
During his address at the Corruption Perception Index briefing on Wednesday, Professor Monroe said the government needs to act quickly to ensure that the gains made by the country are preserved. He also added that after improvement in 2015, the country fell both in score and rank in the 2016 CPI index. Professor Monroe outlined the achievements gained by NIA in 2017.
In June, over 100 integrity ambassadors from a number of schools and communities were graduated by Youth Crime Watch Jamaica in a program sponsored by our organization. In November, over 400 integrity champions from all parishes, each of whom had undergone 2 days training, were commissioned in a ceremony addressed by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition in a program implemented by the Council of Voluntary Social Services.
He also added that over 160 male mentors have graduated from the St. Catherine Ministers Fraternal to work in troubled communities. In addition, a number of long-pending anti-corruption measures were taken. The Integrity Commission Act, which established a single anti-corruption commission, was approved by the Governor-General in October 2017. Meanwhile, Minister of Justice Delroy Chuck raised awareness of the notice to bring the National Integrity Commission Act into operation.
One of the commissioners will be the Auditor General. That is, in fact, in the Act itself. To the best of my knowledge, there will be at least 2 retired judges, Court of Appeal judges, my recollection, and 2 other persons of high integrity. The 5 commissioners are really the sort of board of governors who will appoint 4 directors. And these directors will be Director of Corruption Proceedings, which that will prosecute, Director of Investigation, that will be doing the investigation. There will be a Director for Information and Staff, and then there will be an overall CEO in charge of the whole commission.
However, he noted that until the Governor-General announces the 5 commissioners, this cannot be done.
The police are urging females to exercise extreme caution when taking public transportation. Since the start of the year, the Center for Investigation of Sexual Offences and Child Abuse, CISOCA, has received at least 9 reports of females being raped and robbed by men posing as taxi operators. Codian Barrett has the details.
Head of CISOCA, Superintendent Charmaine Shand, has disclosed that in the reports received, the women note being blindfolded and raped, and then being carried to an ATM to withdraw cash for the attackers before being dropped off at a strange location. The abductions take place both at night and day, and the victims' phones are always confiscated. Statistics shows that most of the victims are between the ages of 14 and 24. 5 of these attacks took place in the St. Catherine South, which covers Portmore, 2 in the corporate area, and another 2 in St. James. There were 27 such cases in 2016 and 16 in 2017. Over 50 females have reportedly been raped and robbed over the last 2 years by men posing as taxi operators. Superintendent Shan notes that in most cases, the fake taxi operators work with other criminals posing as passengers. She says in addition to them using private motor vehicles as fake taxis, the serial rapists are also using vehicles with red license plates. Last week, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF, released a sketch of one of the illegal taxi operators who is wanted for abduction and rape in St. James. He is said to frequent the Coral Gardens, Ironshore, and Providence routes and is generally accompanied by either a male or a female. In recent times, several rape suspects, including 2 serial rapists, have been arrested. In one case in the Portmore area, the suspect is scheduled to appear on 15 identification parades based on the consistency of the details of victims' reports. In other cases in St. Anne and St. Mary, one person was arrested and charged with 8 counts of sexual offenses after he was pointed out in an identification parade. Superintendent Shan adds that due to the frequency of the cases, Sissoko is to launch a public education campaign. She is urging members of the public, particularly females, to take precaution when using taxis. Here are a few tips for women when traveling. 1. Travel with company and keep a family member or friend up to date on your movements. 2. Before boarding any taxi, or as soon as possible after, take a moment to note the registration plate number and share it with family or friends. Take photographs of the car and pass it on if possible. 3. Communicate your point and time of boarding and intended place of disembarking to family members or a close friend. 4. If left alone in a taxi with a driver, notify a family member or a friend immediately. 5. Scream to attract attention if there are any unwelcomed sexual advances or attempt at abduction. 6. Download the Stay Alert app and keep handy the numbers for police emergency and Crime Stop. 7. Remember, you have the option of other means of transportation. Cody Ann Barrett, Frontline News.
Chairman of Jamaica's Review Commission into the operations of CARICOM, Bruce Golding, has expressed shock and dismay over the lack of financial transparency at the Secretariat of the regional body. The former Prime Minister was reporting the findings and recommendations of the 18-member commission reviewing Jamaica's relationship with the CARICOM Single Market and Economy CSME last week. More in this report from Michael Sharp.
Mr. Golding told the forum that he was advised that information about the budget, subscription, and level of arrears are confidential and should not be made public. In this regard, the Commission had made several recommendations which would, like the United Nations, see the CARICOM Secretariat operating on a basis that builds trust.
So we have made some strong recommendations. They have recommended that all of the institutions be subjected to performance evaluation periodically. We suggested every 3 years. An important recommendation that I think we have made as well is from Auditor General to audit not just financial operations, but also the efficiency levels of the Secretariat and all the CARICOM institutions and bodies. Right now there is a Director of Internal Audit in CARICOM, in the Secretariat. But she, last time I checked, it was a woman who was there. She's only responsible for the internal financial arrangements of CARICOM. And she may be asked to go look at some other agency, but that is only if there's a special situation that arises. We were shocked to learn that some of these bodies have never produced audited financial statements. All that is produced are in-house financials, and people will look at it and so on. So there's need for a great deal of reorganizing, restructuring, holding people accountable. As we pointed out in the report, a major problem with the organization of CARICOM is that authority and responsibility are not aligned to ensure accountability. And we have suggested that some serious steps need to be taken.
Mr. Golding said while he would not divulge a budget based on the request by the CARICOM Secretariat, he would give an idea on its size.
That the budget of the Secretariat and the various institutions, not including the CARICOM Development Fund, is roughly equivalent to the budget of the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. You're talking about a considerable amount of money. And something that is worrying is that more than 50% of that comes from donor countries. About 45% of it varies from year to year. It ranges between, it has been as low as 42, sometimes as high as 47. That is what comes from member subscription, and the rest of it depends on donor countries.
The approved budget for the Mona campus in 2008-2009 was over $7 billion.
Enslaved Africans were brutalized and killed for 400 years. However, the CARICOM-based Center for Reparations research discovered that up to 2015, the UK government was still paying off its debt arising from the compensation paid to plantation owners from the 1830s. The plantation owners were compensated for the loss of enslaved Africans following their emancipation. The descendants of these enslaved Africans who were tortured for centuries have received nothing.
Britain and other European nations have argued that they cannot and will not apologize for the crimes committed against the African people. They argue that slavery and the slave trade were legal, therefore they did no wrong. Chair of the CARICOM Reparation Commission, Sir Hilary Beckles, declared that slavery has been a long-standing issue and that Britain has left an enormous burden of poverty in the Caribbean.
This notorious slave loan that has been extracting wealth out of the Caribbean until 2015, Britain has a moral and legal obligation to put this money back in the Caribbean for the development of the Caribbean peoples. And this is what we have been saying in the reparations movement. Britain and Europe needs to return that money to the Caribbean that they have extracted, and now we have proof of even greater extraction into 2015.
Also in attendance at the function was member of the National Council on Reparation, Lord Anthony Gifford, who argued that the British hold a misconception that they are being generous and that by giving the Caribbean aid, they are helping it to develop.
What is paid in the form of aid is only a fraction of the debt which is owed from Britain to the Caribbean. The reparations demand is a demand for justice. It is not, as Sir Hilary said, some kind of begging act. They like to think of us as beggars. We need to stand up for our rights. Get up, stand up for our rights, because it is a matter of justice. Chattel slavery, as Mike Henry told you, was the greatest crime against humanity. And a crime against humanity, and it wasn't even legal at the time.
But when international banks have made significant money from the more than 180 years of interest on compensation for the discontinuation of African slavery, is reparation really off the table? In 2015, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, David Cameron, visited Jamaica and told the region that every single thing about slavery was in the past and that the Caribbean should move on.
Arrangements are now underway for assessments to be made of the Cornwall Regional Hospital following reports of noxious fumes affecting the hospital yet again.
Nurses at Cornwall Regional Hospital have been complaining that the re-emergence of noxious fumes on 3 floors at the hospital over the past 2 weeks is causing illness among staff and patients. Opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Dayton Campbell, is demanding a detailed explanation from the Health Minister, Dr. Christopher Tufton.
And to get the real story as to what is going on. We have missed the deadline for the reopening of the facility, and there has been no commitment as to a new deadline for the opening of the facility. And as far as I'm concerned, that won't come anytime soon because it is grossly behind time. And the fact of the matter is that they just have not dealt with the problem appropriately. What they should have done from the outset was to do an evaluation of what is the true extent as opposed to try to cover it up. Once you determine the true extent, then you can determine what is the quantity of work that needs to be done, and then you could have appropriately allocated for it and set a workable time period to get things done.
President of the Nurses Association of Jamaica, NAJ, Carmen Johnson, says there is a possibility that equipment at the facility may be contributing to the illness among the staff. She explains that some staff members who work at other facilities are reporting adverse reactions to equipment transported from the Cornwall Regional Hospital. The Health Ministry dispatched a team to the hospital on Wednesday to respond to the reports. However, Mrs. Johnson says the problem may be deeper than imagined and more options need to be considered.
You have nurses who have been reassigned from Cornwall to Falmouth to take care of the patients who belong to Cornwall. But yet when items are taken from Cornwall to Falmouth to these nurses, they are breaking out. So it tells you that it's not just in the air, but it is also on the packages and the things. Last week, one of my nurses complained, two of my nurses complained, when they touch it, they break out, they show you the spots on there. So advise last week, but say to them, don't autoclave things at Cornwall, don't take care, leave them here, and we will take care of them in Falmouth so you are not re-exposing yourself, because some of those persons were severely affected by the ill health.
And in light of these developments, Mrs. Johnson is urging the government to consider other alternatives in the interest of the health of all workers. She also proposed a new approach.
We need to look at other places where we know, say to them, though we don't have the money, can we negotiate something, move off the other floors, reorganize the event, clean it down properly, re-insulate, re-AC the institution, and see how we clean up the whole ventilation.
Mrs. Johnson is calling on the government to fix the issue swiftly, as there is the risk of more workers and patients being affected in the long run.
Since the start of the year, we have been reporting on fires. This has raised concerns that Jamaicans need to be educated on how to prevent fires. Cody and Barrett has that story.
Many persons have been taught at some point in their lives never to leave a lit fire unattended. It seems the reinforcement on fire prevention and safety is needed among Jamaicans once more. The increase in fires has not only drawn the attention of Minister of Local Government Desmond McKenzie, but also that of Frontline News. While 3 of 4 fires we've reported on resulted in no fatalities, the issue is still a major cause for concern. Unsupervised children, candles, and faulty electrical wiring were the main causes of the dangerous fires that we have covered so far this year. While some fires are less preventable, others can easily be prevented. Here are some tips. Never leave children unattended. Because of their natural curiosity, they can be at great risk. You should never leave children alone in a room where there are portable heaters, cookers, or an open fire. Keep matches and lighters well out of their reach, and never leave children alone in the house, especially with a lit candle or other open flame. Most children are extremely active, and this could result in them starting or spreading fires. Many fires in the homes start at night. Make sure you have a bedtime fire safety routine. To help keep your home and family safe, here are a few simple things which you should do every night. Unplug all electrical appliances not designed to stay on. Make sure no cigarettes are still burning. Put a guard around open fires that you wish to remain lit. Switch off portable heaters and close the doors of all unoccupied rooms. Play it safe. Practice these safety tips and help to prevent more fires.
We take a break. News Rewind will be right back with the top business stories.
The NSW
President Donald Trump's
waste reduction.
Marcus Eppley. Welcome back to News Rewind. Now for the top business stories of the past week. The Bank of Jamaica has lowered the interest paid on overnight deposits by 25 basis points, with the hope that this will impact on rates charged at commercial banks. According to BOJ Governor Brian Winter, the adjustment in the policy rate reflects the bank's assessment that inflation for the next 8 quarters will remain within the inflation target of 4 to 6%. More in this report.
The governor of the central bank, Brian Winter, was responding to questions about the controversial bill brought as a private member's motion by opposition MP Fitz Jackson. It sought in part to protect customers from certain fees and provide a minimum service package.
I can't say a lot about the subject because we're speaking about a debate that's either happened already, which we're not part of, but I'm committed to providing the advice that we're required to when it comes up. But what I do not want to do, and it would be wrong for me to do, is to be engaged in the controversy around this issue. We do not have a voice in this debate. We're not a part of it. Okay? We are a subject of it, perhaps. Okay? No, and that's our role. We are a governmental institution, and as I stress again, we're a creature of statute. Okay, we have to do what the law calls on us to do, what we're required to do. I do appreciate the debate you're talking about. Bank of Jamaica is not a part of this public debate. And I don't think we should be until we're called upon by the authorities to do so.
The Minister of Finance, Audley Shaw, in rejecting the bill, had said much of the concerns raised were a part of the planned Customer Protection Authority for deposit-taking institutions. This framework was promised by June of this year. But is the BOJ on track?
Yeah. Although, we're going to try our best to do it even more quickly if we can. Well, it's a subject that is of great intense interest, and we've always thought it's very important.
The criticism was that it would take a very long time before it became law, and in the meantime, the customers would be at the mercy of the banks. Michael Sharp, Frontline News.
Mexico's foreign minister is to visit Jamaica next month. This visit is viewed by foreign media as the latest development in the U.S.-led pressure on the Nicolas Maduro administration in Venezuela. Kimberly Wright has more.
That Maduro retains loyalty from some Caribbean nations that have long benefited from Caracas's generosity in relation to oil have been unwilling to shun the country in regional diplomatic efforts. But the news service is reporting that Mexican Foreign Minister Luis Videgaray will travel to Jamaica and other Caribbean nations next month as part of efforts to erode Venezuela's oil-based influence in the Caribbean. It says Mexico has been looking at the possibility of replacing Venezuela's PetroCaribe program that provided cheap loans for oil to Caribbean nations. Reuters said it was told by Jamaica's Minister of Foreign Affairs that talks on oil are a possibility since Jamaica already purchases crude from Mexico. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Kamina Johnson-Smith said she had invited Videgaray to Jamaica last October, and they decided his visit should coincide with a regional conference of the U.S. Food and Agriculture Organization due to be held in Jamaica on March 5 to 8. Videgray's trip follows a visit to Latin America and the Caribbean earlier this month by U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who announced plans to study how possible oil sanctions against Venezuela could be mitigated in the Caribbean.
And that's your News Rewind for this week. I'm Shane Masters. On behalf of the production team, thanks for watching.